I've been doing some interesting reading here in one of my favorite books, Herb Cohen's book, You Can Negotiate Anything. And I'll tell you what one of my favorite chapters is. A chapter that's proven very effective for me is chapter 5, entitled Power. How many of you agree with me that power is somewhat important in negotiating? Matter of fact, each of us have been in a bargaining situation with our kids, with vendors, with our peers, with our employees, people at church, civic groups, all over. Do you realize there's always a power play somewhere? Now, how many of you agree that the more power sources you know, can recognize, defend against, and even use on your behalf, the better off you'll be? I read an interesting definition. What is power when it comes to negotiating? It is the ability, the capacity to influence or even control somebody else's behavior. Power is the ability to control somebody else's behavior. Now, it goes without saying, those with the most power are going to get the best results when negotiating. And you know what the truth of it is? We often don't have any power. Why is that? Because we think we don't have any power, or, more importantly, we don't know how many power sources are there out there that are right in front of us, available for our use, and we don't use them anyhow. Let me just throw a couple out before I get into the big four that I want to emphasize in this module. Let's talk about the power of precedent. If you sell things and you gave somebody in the past a discount to get their business, that first order, what do you suppose is going to happen when you work with that person again? They will remember. You set a precedent by giving a discount. It is very difficult to defend the situation that you say, well, I can't give that again. That is the power of the precedent. What people do before. If you give your kids the ability to stay out too late, how many think it's always difficult to tighten down and get them in earlier? You have set the precedent. Your kids will use that power of precedent. Mom, Dad, the last time you said I could do this, how many think that's very difficult to defend? How about the power of investment? The more time you or I invest in a negotiation, the more likely we want to put a deal together. Even if it's a bad deal. Isn't that amazing? Look, you've been working for 2 minutes on a transaction and it doesn't look like it's going to come out very well. How many think in 2 minutes you'd say, forget it, no deal? But what if you've been working on a sale, a proposal, trying to put a deal together, and you've been working for a week, a month, 6 months? How many think you've got so much time, effort, blood, anxiety invested in it that you, ready for this, will make a concession you ordinarily wouldn't make because you've got so much invested? Want to hear another one? Reward and punishment. Great power sources. I will reward you if you give me a discount. How much is that? $50. I'll tell you what, instead of buying one, could you give it to me for $40 if I buy 3 of them? The reward is, give me a discount and I'll buy more from you. Or punishment. Well, look, I'm going to need a better price on those widgets for my company. And if you don't give me a discount, I got to tell you, I'm not sure we'll do business with you again. Matter of fact, I'm going to talk to Fred over in purchasing and say, these people are hard to work with. How many think that's punishment? Now, you may think that's unethical, improper, but let's be realistic. It happens all the time. So what do we do if we want to be better negotiators? Well, we better have our stuff together. I made a few notes here I want to refer to, but I want to refer to power, which is leverage or influence, and I want to focus on the big 4 negotiating power sources. Of all the negotiating power sources, these 4 are the biggies. Here comes the first one, information. I heard a formula once. You may have seen it if you've been with me in my live program. Information equals knowledge, and knowledge gives you power. The more information you have, the more knowledge you gain, and the more power you get. And this is going to sound routine. This is going to be something you're going to say, John, I already knew that. And that is, you got to ask more questions. The more questions you ask, the more information you get, the more knowledge you earn, and the more power you have as a result of that. You say, well, I already knew that. Well, then I got a question for you. Why aren't you asking more questions? I heard a program once where somebody said, there's more money to be made asking the right question than in giving the right answer. Good negotiators know that. You've got to ask more questions. The more questions you ask gives you two big benefits. First, every little morsel of information you have tells you a vulnerability, a weakness in your opponent. They also will identify strengths that your opponent has that you better guard against. You probably can't beat them there, but keep asking questions, probing for information which will tell you a weakness. And here's an announcement. Every negotiator has a hidden agenda. Have you heard of the concept of the hidden agenda? That's a phrase that's been around a long time. Everybody goes into a negotiation, you, me, and everybody we'll ever deal with an agenda, a purpose, a fallback plan that they hope you don't learn about. That hidden agenda has got to be revealed. The more questions you ask, the more you will find out what their hidden agenda is. Look, I wrote down a couple of rules here which I thought might be interesting. First, listen to this. Hidden agendas exist in every negotiation. I told you they're always there. They always reveal a weakness. The things that people want to hide from us aren't their strengths. They'll boast about those, but they're going to conceal their weaknesses. Do you see how important it is to ask more questions, to probe, to get them speaking, talking more, so you can expose that? Our job is to uncover them. Their job is to defend. One thing you've got to be realizing, and that is the more information we have only comes from questions that reveals their hidden agenda. That makes us more powerful. Now let's go to the second of the four power sources. We have information. Let's talk about competition. Competition. Don't you hear it all the time? If you sell anything, what have you heard? Well, we're talking to other people who sell the same thing. What are they trying to do? They're trying to shake your foundation and get you to make concessions. If you don't, the implication is that they're going to go to your competition. Well, you know what the truth of it is? If you're good and you give great service or have great products, how many think your competition can't match that? So don't get weak-kneed. Don't cave in. And when somebody says they're going to your competition, and guess what good negotiators do? They pretend they have competition to go to even if they don't. I bet you've been in a situation where you knew that your opponent had to use you. Why? Because you're the best at what you do. But what will they do anyhow? Say, well, I've been on the internet surfing around. I found other people do what you do. Other people will sell what you do. Truth be told, they don't know them. They haven't worked with them before. They don't know the quality of service and reliability. But don't let them use competition to have you make a concession you wouldn't ordinarily want. You've got to be very careful to guard against competition. And isn't it a two-way street? They say, well, you know, I'm not sure I can work with you at that price. I may have to go to your competition. Why don't you say, well, you know what? Maybe that's what you ought to do this time. And you know what? I've got other customers looking for the same product and they're willing to pay my price. How many think you're using competition on them? They're going to go to competing vendors. You're going to go to competing customers. Now, you don't overplay your hand. You don't get so tough that you lose the capacity to put a deal together. But don't let competition get you weak-kneed and making concessions you know you shouldn't make. So information, competition are two great power sources. You've used them and had them used against you. Here comes number three. It is time. I bet you never thought of time as a power source, but it is. What if somebody says, well, let's see if we can put a deal together, and I got to watch my time because I have a flight at 4 o'clock. What do good negotiators do? If you know the other side is going to leave at 4 o'clock, you don't do a whole lot of making concessions to around 3 or 3:30. How many think now they're under the pressure of time to put a deal together before they leave? Or let's just realize something right up front. Most Americans are so impatient. They cannot wait to put a deal together. As you've heard me say in other modules, one of the best negotiating tactics we can use is simply call a timeout. Just stop everything. Say, let's pick this up later today, tomorrow. That pause, that timeout, gives you great leverage, great influence, we call it power. So when somebody says they want to take a time out, don't worry about it. It's simply the power of time being used on you. Simply welcome that and say, that's a great idea. We both need to rethink where we are on this anyhow. Don't be too quick to put a deal together. What do we say about Americans? We've got to do it quick. We invented the drive-through window. We invented the microwave. We got to do everything quick, quick, fast, fast. If you take that same desire for speed and take it to negotiation, somebody who's willing to slow down and wait you out is going to have power, exert power over you. You can't let that happen. One word to write down before you go into a negotiation: patience. I've even known people to say the following: I'm going into a negotiation with this purpose. I will not put a deal together during this meeting. That simply puts as a strategy the fact that no matter how good it is, we're going to wait. And those of you that think that you're going to lose the deal because it doesn't go together in one meeting has simply become vulnerable to the power source called time. You can't let that work against you. All right, let's go to the last of the four power sources. The last of the four is legitimacy. If you've been with me in my live program, you know I do a little routine with a hand on the cheek. I'll save that for seeing you in person if you've not seen it before. But it really comes down to this point. Legitimacy is a power source that says anytime you put something in writing, it has more influence, it has more impact, it is retained and understood better than anything you say. How many have heard the phrase, in one ear and out the other? If you want to have more influence and power in negotiating, write more things down. How many times have you heard somebody take out a pen or pencil, write down a figure, and hand it to their opponent? You say, why did they write it down? I'm telling you, as soon as somebody sees it in print, sees it in writing, all of a sudden it has an authority, a credence that it never had in any other way. If you simply are negotiating with somebody, don't just talk to them about price and terms, put them in writing. And if you put them in writing, make it even more formal. Put it in print. The spoken word can be modified easily by an additional spoken word. But a written word, that's legitimate. And if you really want to have a great legitimacy, don't just write it down. Take it up a level and put it in print. If you want it above print, make a sign. A sign that's plastered on the wall or a disclosure on top of a proposal is like a sign that says, we never vary from that. That gives that particular posture legitimacy. All returns must be within 10 days with a receipt. How many think that's simply using legitimacy to control by power what other people do? Somebody 2 weeks later decide to take something back, and what do? They see the sign and they don't take it back. Truth is, I bet most vendors would take it back. That's the power of legitimacy working on you. Now look, you need to do some more research. You may even want to watch this module again, because when you think of the big four power sources, these are ones you've got to be better at identifying, not only for your use, but to be able to defend it when other people use it against you. You want to defend against the power of giving away too much information. You want to get more information from them. You want to be able to defend against competition. When they say they've got competition, remember, you can bring that same card to play against them. Time. Don't be too impatient. If you're impatient negotiators make concessions and typically end up with less than the best deal possible. And finally, number 4, put it in print. If you've got proposals, you've got restrictions, don't just tell somebody, put them in print. Anything you put in print has more credence. That's what good negotiators do. They learn more every day about the power sources that can make them better. It's power sources that should go on to your negotiating blueprint so you can become the best negotiator possible. Make sure you do that so you can have great success as you keep negotiating.